Alrighty, afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Partnering for Success webinar on multi-factor authentication. Today, we will be discussing the basics of multi-factor authentication, where it should be applied, and why it serves as such powerful protection. This webinar will be recorded, and a link will be distributed to all registered participants. As we progress through the presentation, please feel free to put any questions you may have in the chat box. And with that, I will pass it off to McKenzie Walton with VC3.
Hey guys, I'm McKenzie. So just a little bit of background about us in case you are not familiar. We were founded in '94, so about 30 years ago, on local government. Is our bread and butter. That's what we were founded on. And so essentially everything there is to do with policies, procedures, everything like that, we are considered like experts in. And so with that, we are Tennessee Municipal League's endorsed partner for all things IT. And of course, through their partnership with PEP, that is kind of why we have been reached out to talk about MFA. We've also done a couple of different sessions at the PEP symposium in the fall. So with that, we'll get into MFA. We have a presentation that I will get Miss Amber to pull up for us, and we'll get started. And then, of course, at the end, we'll leave time for some questions.
All right, guys, sorry, working on it. Where did it go? We see it.
Perfect.
Trying to get it to do the presentation version. Okay, I'm not seeing it. Is it okay if I scroll for you?
No, you are fine if you want. I can get mine pulled up. Yeah, you're more than welcome to scroll. That is totally fine. So yeah, just why is multi-factor authentication important? At first, I'll go over a couple of different security breach statistics. This goes through the year 2023. So some of these statistics are a little bit outdated, obviously, because we're almost at the end of 2024. But as you can imagine, as time has progressed, with that comes majority of these statistics have probably gone up, whether it be cost or successful attacks or whatever. So to start with, in 2023, the average data breach cost was around $5 million. So essentially what that means is that whether it be ransomware or a ransom that had to be paid, or for you guys to actually fix the issues in 2023, that average cost was $5 million. Also in that year, public sector was number one for the most attacked and compromised area. Of course, as we all know, one of those reasons is because as a city, you guys hold a lot of valuable information. City, utility, counties, anything like that, you guys are going to most likely have social security numbers, addresses, a lot of PII. And unfortunately, in saying that, local government until the last couple of years really has not gotten the cybersecurity that they needed. And so, unfortunately, a lot of attackers have realized that. And so that's why, they're starting to breach local governments more often than not, because usually commercial businesses have things like MFA in place. that maybe local government entities don't. And so the next statistic, which has been shared, this statistic has changed a little bit with the implementation of some of the cybersecurity tools that are out there. It has gone down just a little bit, but not much, maybe by a couple of days. And so from start to finish, the average time from start to finish from a breach is 314 days. Essentially, what that means is that as soon as somebody gets into your all's environment, it takes about 7 months for somebody to recognize that there's somebody in there. So over those 7 months, let's say somebody breaches in through your email. Over that 7 month period, they're digging through, finding all the information they possibly could find that they could use, whether for themselves, for monetary gain, or reputation, or honestly, just for fun of it. And then once they're identified, it takes about 4 months after the fact for it to actually be fixed and contained. Sometimes after that, there is the rebuilding process. But like I said, for about 4 months, that's how long it takes on average for after it's recognized for you guys to actually fix and contain the issue to ensure that it's not going to continue to spread. Again, I just mentioned emails. Out of all of the emails and out of the that have been sent in 2022, statistic isn't available yet for last year that I could find, but for all the emails that were sent, about a third of them being spam. I'm sure you guys are fully aware. You pull up your Gmails or anything like that on your personal email addresses, and almost all of them are going to be spam. So in saying that, about 95% of the attacks that are happening are all happening in your emails. So what we're finding is that a lot of the emails that are getting sent out are extremely what's the word I'm looking for? They're sophisticated. They're extremely sophisticated. And so, for example, if your city is working on a specific agenda item and you guys are trying to present something at the city, and of course it's publicized that that's going to be in the next agenda, there's people out there that could use it, create a simulated phishing attack or whatever, and send an email to somebody within the city that's like, hey, review this document for the upcoming meeting, and they could click it, and of course it's a cyber attack. So that's why a lot of these attacks are starting to get really successful and sophisticated by sending things through email. Of course, like the statistic says, about 300,000 new pieces of malware are created daily. So whenever you guys are using your systems, whether it be email or your financial software packages or anything like that, websites, there has to be constant monitoring out there, because the malware that is being created, what's created today is completely different than what's going to be created tomorrow. So it's constant. And then, as you can tell from the data right there, from 2022 to 2023, it was a little bit less than doubled the amount of how much a data breach costs. Because between 2022 and 2023, attacks started getting more sophisticated. They started just being able to learn a lot more about an environment. And as you can tell from the last statistic, new malware was created. So as things are created, items get harder to try to track down and fix. This is a really big statistic, a really big number. And again, as you can imagine, the 2024 number, whenever it's released at the end of this year, is probably going to be significantly more. But in 2023, the entire cost of cyber attacks was a little over $6 trillion, with it estimated to be at 10.5 by 2025. So as you can imagine, it is a game that, at this point, public entities are going to be forced to have to invest in IT and cybersecurity where they've not had to do that in the past, because of how expensive it is and how costly it is if you don't protect that data. And then, as you can tell with just the last two, an average around 24,000 apps are blocked daily on the internet. And then with half of the organizations with devices out there, there's no security measurements in place. So if you guys were to look at your policies and procedures that you have in place right now, how many of your devices, so whether it be computers, mobile devices, routers, like anything like that involving technology. So like any of those systems, your security systems, anything like that. What security measurements do you guys have in place to protect your network from attack? If you look at that, as I said, more than 50% of those devices across the country are not being protected at all. Amber, you're good to go to the next slide. So which begs the question, what's multi-factor authentication? As you guys are probably all aware, this is something that has been a phrase that has been thrown around a lot recently. So multi-factor authentication is a method that is used for you to be able to grant access to somebody to your system, and they have to provide two or more different factors. So some of the things that are most familiar to all of us is, of course, what it says: something you have, something you know, something you are. So a lot of times you guys are probably familiar with like biometric data. So like fingerprints, or iPhones have facial recognition. Something you know, so like your password, or something you have would be an example of Microsoft has a Microsoft Authenticator app, or your cell phone, for example. So in order to be able to actually authenticate after you've typed in your password, you have to go to your device and physically authenticate through your device or through your text message and type that in. So the whole purpose of that is, let's say somebody's trying to breach into your network and they are able to guess your password. Well, if MFA is enabled the way that it's supposed to be enabled, and you guys have that, then whenever that gets sent to somebody's phone, you'll be able to get a notification of like, hey, use this password, or use this 6-digit code or whatever it is. And that's the only way to actually be able to log in. Versus if MFA is not enabled, you type in your password, they're automatically let into the system. Amber, if you want to go on to the next one. Okay, so why implement MFA? We kind of went over this just a second ago, but one of the main reasons is that, and it is one of the most important reasons for, of course, PEP's purposes, is that it's required for cyber liability insurance, but also passwords are just given away without you even realizing it. So let's say there is somebody that has had their credentials taken on the dark web. Their passwords have been compromised. And so, like I said before, if your password is compromised, if you have MFA enabled, there's still not a way for them to be able to log into the system unless they have access to your all's authentication measures, which they probably don't. But again, it's just to protect yourself so that there's always 2 or more ways to log into your system so that it's just that extra level of protection. And then, of course, as you guys see here, is that 60% of the phishing attacks actually happen by targeting Microsoft 365 credentials in themselves. So, again, super easy way to fix that, just enable MFA. A lot of Microsoft 365 emails have that ability to be able to implement MFA through your Microsoft account. It just depends on the type of license that you all have, but it is a really easy fix as far as implementing that on your email. Of course, there's some other ways that you guys need to implement it as well, besides just your email. But at the very bare minimum, and I say bare minimum, for the simple fact that so many breaches do happen through email, you guys need to implement it through your email. Now, for insurance purposes, it does need to be on everything, and we'll go over that on the next slide, Miss Amber. And that's just the priorities. So there's a couple of pinpoints here. So out of the 5 different areas, you have the internet-facing services. So those are going to be your emails, whether that be 365 or like the government Google services. It's going to be any of your VPNs. So if you guys have employees that work remotely that log into your network through a VPN, so virtual private network, you guys are going to have MFA on that. It's also going to be your cloud-based systems. So your RMS systems at your police departments, your CRMs, any of your payroll, any of your utility softwares, you guys are going to need to implement it on that. Again, a lot of these systems, especially the cloud-based systems, should provide you with a way to be able to have MFA implemented, especially if they are through a software provider. So again, really just ask those questions to them of, hey, what are we doing? If they don't, there's a lot of other methods that are out there that can be laid over top of them that work in congruency with those softwares. The second thing is any system that houses sensitive data. So if you guys, for some reason, have any like health information. So if y'all have like EMTs on staff or anything like that has access to be able to, like, any health information systems or personal identifiable information or financial or anything like that, any system that houses any of that data needs to have MFA on it as well. Besides obvious reasons, like to make sure that everybody's information is protected, there's just a lot of laws and regulations that that cover that. So like if you guys have to follow PCI compliance, or if you have to follow the CJIS compliance guidelines, anything like that is going to require MFA to be laid on top of that. And of course, the critical infrastructure and workstations. So your firewalls, switches, servers, of course, your workstations. A lot of people have like shared workstations, but it would still be recommended that if you guys do have shared workstations, that it's configured in a way for MFA to be layered over top of that, so that some random person can't just walk up and try to log in using one of your employees' credentials if they have it on a Post-it note on their desk, which a lot of people do. A lot of people have a Post-it note on their desk to log in. So let's say somebody walks into an office, logs in. If MFA is enabled, they're not going to be able to actually gain access into your system because, great, they have the username and password, but they still have to use that second authentication measure. And then, of course, administrative accounts. So any accounts that have the ability to be able to change your like access control policies and your user policies, anything like that, need to have MFA enabled on them too, so that you don't have Joe from the sewer system, able to log into your administrative accounts to change all of your different policies. So that's that. And then of course, like on the next slide, the implementations of MFA. Like I said, some of them are super easy. You're going to want to make sure that you have one of the things that you don't want to do is email. Okay. The reason that email is one of the least secure ways of implementing MFA is because the majority of us all use the same passwords for everything. If you don't, great, but majority of us do. So if they have your username and password for your computer, then they most likely have your username and password for your email. So in saying that, if you use MFA to send an email to yourself to authorize that, not a secure way. A semi-secure way is phone calls and text messages. One of the reasons that it's considered a semi-secure way is that a lot of times you're gonna have your cell phone with you, but let's say you don't. Let's say you've lost your cell phone doesn't have a lock on it or whatever, and so somebody is trying to get a cell phone call to authenticate. Somebody might have your cell phone. So also, if you, I apologize. Just lost my train of thought. That's one of the main reasons. And then of course the highly secure ways. So secure cards. A lot of times you guys are going to have those cards on you. Those are, you also have your fingerprints. Your fingerprint is specific to you. We all know that. It's the biometric. So whether it be fingerprint or facial ID, as weird as this sounds, there is some methods use like eyes. So your biometric IDs are one of the safest because nobody can steal that from you. Of course, electronic key fobs, those are specific. And then your authenticator apps. So there's authenticator apps like Microsoft Authenticator, you have Duo, you have Passly. Those apps are going to give you a one-time code specifically on the application itself. It also will give you like a push notification. So for example, if I log into my email right now, I would have, and it's on a device that's not recognized, or if it's been more than like 2 hours since I logged in, I would have to send myself an authentication to my app. And then I would have to go into my authentication app, which is secured by my biometrics. And I would have to either do a push, yes, that it's accepted, or get the like 6-digit code to implement it and type it in. So again, that top box are going to be the most secure methods of authentication. And then with that, are there any questions from anybody?
The chat box. I am not seeing any questions. All right, so if there are no questions, thank you so much to McKenzie for sharing her insights on MFA, and thank you all for participating. Our next Partnering for Success webinar will cover special events and will be held on Wednesday, November 20th at 1 p.m. Central. To register, please visit our website under upcoming events. And I hope you all enjoy this.
Amber, I do want to make one statement.
Yeah, please.
That is super important and is definitely beneficial to you all at PEP as well, is that the state of Tennessee did just release the cybersecurity grant. And with that, MFA is one of the things that can be paid for, so apply for it. So there's a lot of free money out there that can be, that you guys can apply for, to be able to implement some of these security measures to meet the security objectives that you have to have for your insurance purposes. So I would definitely look into that if there's any questions. Of course, you guys have my email and you have Amber's email. Would love to help anybody out with that if they need help with it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
Absolutely.